Good morning, everybody, and welcome. For those of you in Buffalo, we're having our first snowy commute today, and it's looking very much like a wintry wonderland outside my window. But before we jump in today's webinar, I've had some feedback that I want to share with you, and the feedback was along the lines of, we love the webinars, but we wish we could go a little bit deeper into these topics. Excuse me. So I wanted to share our vision for these and explain what we're trying to accomplish here with the webinars that we're doing. Really what we're trying to do is we're focused on giving you a breadth of topics. Maybe you might think about it a mile wide and an inch deep in an effort to expose you to topics we know are important to small business owners. And really our goal here is to introduce you to a topic with the hope you'll be inspired to dig a bit deeper on your own. So we're not trying to share everything you need to know in 30 minutes. And to that end, we'll always list resources for you. All that being said, if you would like to go deeper into the topic, we may be able to do something in the future where we dig a little bit deeper in some of these areas for you. So we're going to send out a survey sometime in the next couple months to see what your needs are for the future. But for today, let's jump on and really get into today's topic, which is people. And before I start, I want to make sure that we say thank you to the Bonadeo Group, who is one of our sponsors and supporting today's webinar. So thank you for your support. So today's all about people. And we've spent a lot of time in previous webinars talking about the speed of change and the business environment of the future. And for many, many years, I believe that the speed of exponential technological change is being missed by most of us in the small business community. And the reality is we're getting to a point now where if you miss it, you're going to die, quite frankly. And we just had Peter Diamandis here, who is author of Abundance and Bold and founder of Singularity University, a futurist. He was here last week at the university, and since that visit, I'm even more convinced that the democratization of almost every product and service will truly level the playing field for all businesses over the next 10 to 15 years or so. So small will be able to compete with big. Big will likely die quicker. Small business will be going in and out of business, but traditional ways of gaining competitive advantage are really going to start to disappear. And I think an example of that today might be Amazon. So Amazon's great if you're an e-commerce entrepreneur and you're starting out. It takes little to get your product in front of millions of people. At the same time, if you own a brick and mortar small business, you're often struggling to just survive. So we found this in one of the businesses that I've owned over the years. We were in the water garden business, and there was a time where we had a lot of knowledge and people would come in and shop the knowledge, but then shop the product online, which makes it very difficult for small businesses. So how do our businesses remain relevant or even survive? And in my opinion, it's people. People still want to connect with people in a meaningful type of way. And I believe that those businesses are able to build great teams, whether it's online or in a brick and mortar, are the businesses that will win. So people may soon be the only competitive advantage left, in my opinion. And if you can build great teams, I think you're going to win. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, because you can have a great strategy, you can have all the cash in the world, but if you don't have people, who's going to execute on that? And I've got to do a little disclaimer. I'm not an organizational behavior expert, and there are many great ones out there if that's the type of help that you need in more depth. But I do have lots of real world experience building teams, good and bad, and that's what I hope to share with you this morning. So let's start by looking at what makes people tick and a little bit about the science of happiness. There's a lot of research around happiness, and I think before we can talk about teams, it's important that we understand what makes people happy, what makes them tick. So happy employees are engaged employees. And although this field of positive psychology and the science of happiness is a relatively new field of study and research, the information is coming quickly, and I think it's important for us to look at it and to understand. So this first slide I have up here, and a lot of this is out of a special edition that Time Magazine put out called The Science of Happiness. But one of the things I want you to see here is that purpose matters to people. And if you look at this list of jobs from the top left going down, then up to the next column. These are in order of people's happiness with the work that they do. And as Simon aptly put forth with his concept of the golden circle, and make sure you watch his TED Talk if you haven't. It's, I think, approaching 42 million views now. It's not what you do or how you do it that matters. It's why you do it or your purpose. So people care about purpose, and that goes for your team members. Are you giving them a workplace with purpose or just a job? That's a good place to start. There are many things that impact happiness, and you need to consider these within the world of HR laws, of course, but your team members are individuals with unique needs and situations. So it's really important that we be human as business owners and leaders. Money can increase happiness, yet rates of happiness have not kept pace with the trend of rising incomes. Family, married people, believe it or not, are happier than unmarried people, but the results are less clear when you add children in the picture. You can look at faith, you can look at age. Seniors tend to be happiest among all adults. And what's interesting is resiliency. Happiness is strongly connected to how well you're able to rebound from setbacks or how you look at that. So another thing around happiness, can money buy happiness? And there's been a lot of research in this area. And I guess the answer is money matters to a point. But you make a mistake if you think that's all that drives people. That may be true if someone is making minimum wage and trying to just put food on their table. But as wages increase, other needs rise to the surface. And how might you apply some of these findings to building a great team? Can you find ways to create experiences, have a shared purpose, give back with your business? All things that I think we should be thinking about. So we can also get to this question of motivation or inspiration, and can we really motivate people, or does motivation come from within? And there's a lot of argument about this, but I don't really believe I can motivate anyone. I can inspire them, but if we assume motivation comes from within, it's a little bit different way to look at it. And it's really a hard concept to grasp for small business owners because you all have self-motivation that's innate to the entrepreneurial drive. It's natural for most of you, but it's your business. You have to remember that. And your team may not, or probably does not have that same perspective of things. So how do we think about helping our team to be inspired or to move from unmotivated to motivated, assuming this is something they have to do themselves? I think of a lot of it is about communication. If you understand that not everyone's going to be excited about everything at work, and engagement aligns at some level with their individual needs, and you're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, but I think we really have to pay attention to this as we think about how we build great teams. And another way to think about this is Lencioni's work and his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of Teams, and he's had some follow-on work after that. So how can you stack the deck a little bit in your favor? And if you look at his work, it really all starts with trust. If you don't have trust as the foundation in your organization, you really don't have anything. So if you take the time to be honest and transparent with your team, you can build trust, have meaningful conflict, gain commitment, hold people accountable, and ultimately focus on results. You need to find a balance between sharing your passion, setting expectations, accountability, all the while remembering to celebrate together when the victories do come. And we'll talk about this a little bit more at the back end of our presentation today. Excuse me. So let's talk about hiring for a little bit. And again, anything I'm about to say, we have to remember that we have very strict HR laws that you all have to pay attention to and follow. But you know, you've all heard before, hire slow, fire fast. So I also want to say, think about waiting for the right person for the right job. So one of the first things I think we have to recognize is that teams build businesses, not individuals. And one of the challenges of small businesses and their inability to scale is that the owner has been at the center of everything and has been able to build a business to a certain size. And that's typically around $1 million, maybe 10 employees. But after that, you can't manage that many people by yourself. So how do we build a team? Perhaps you could say, I have built a team, but you haven't built a management team yet. So building a team is really important if you want to scale your business. And remember, no individual starts a business. In reality, it's always about teams. And if you look at research with all the Fortune 500 companies, every single one of them was formed by a team. A good way to think about it is, what are the people that you need? Or as Jim Collins says, excuse me, what are the right seats on the bus? And do you have the right people in those seats, and are they doing the right things right? So a great exercise for you to do that I've mentioned in earlier podcasts is to create a functional org chart. And obviously a functional org chart is about functions, not about individual people. So create the org chart for your organization as if you were starting it today at the size it is today, or if you're envisioning it for strategic planning 3-5 years in the future. Create the positions you need, forgetting about the people that you have, and then go back and plug in the people that you have. Do they fit? Are there multiple people in the same seat? Do we have the right people? And what you're going to find is you probably have some of the wrong people in the wrong seats. You probably need a key person or two to be able to go to the next level. You probably have your own self in many of the seats and are unable to move forward, but it's a great exercise to work with. And also, start with purpose. Back to our happiness discussion in Simon Sinek. Yes, people work for money, but they also work for intrinsic values like purpose. They want to love what they do, and they want to do impactful work. And I think this is becoming even more so with some of the younger generations that are willing to give up some financial reward in order to be doing work that's meaningful and has purpose to them. So understanding not just what you do and how you do it, which we all know that, but understanding why do we get up every day, what is our greater purpose as an organization, will help us attract people that believe in what we believe and repel people that don't. And the same goes for customers. So it's an important concept, I think, that he simplified, and it's important to keep it top of mind. If you think of purpose as the soul of your organization, then where do values fit in? And we all talk about core values, but many of us really haven't done the work around core values. More and more today, we're seeing engagement around values. And I just mentioned before, the younger generations are demanding it. And they're demanding purpose, and purpose really starts in values and who you are as an organization. And just a couple quotes that I think are really apropos for what we're talking about today. But values are the bedrock of any corporate culture. And if employees know what their company stands for, then they are much more likely to make decisions that will support those standards. So if we think of values as the DNA of our organization, or the shoulds or shouldn'ts of our organization, they come from you, the leader. And I said early on, I don't believe you can motivate people. You need to inspire them. Excuse me. So being clear about your values can be something that your team members can motivate themselves around when they believe in what you do and they believe it in your company. So these shared beliefs, or the do's or don'ts, are strong influencers. Excuse me again. I apologize, I'm getting a bit of a cold with this weather. The other tool that you can use is, remember, values have to be real. They have to be your DNA. They have to be alive in your organization. They really can't be something that are just made up. Here's a list of many, many common core values, but there are lists out there. Again, these come from you. What do you stand for? And typically we like to say 3 to 5, a handful of values are probably the right amount for most organizations. But as you look through lists, make these real, make them part of your organization. You don't have to just use words. You can use phrases. You can make them interesting. And there's some key questions for companies that you have to be thinking about. What do you stand for? How do you treat how do we treat our customers? These are all based in values. How do we treat each other at work? How do we want to be seen in public as a company? So using those values in management and people management, I think, is really critically important to this discussion around building great teams. You know, we should be using our values in the hiring process. We should be using our values in our decisions of whom to promote and who to manage. We should be using it again on with promotion, with salary increases, et cetera. So it's really important that your values become part of your organization. Another important tool is certainly job descriptions, right? And I think a lot of times these are an afterthought. We go on the internet, we grab a job description. You've got to make the job description your own, but you got to make sure it's legal. So are your purpose and your values represented in that job description? Is it clear? Is it easy to understand? Does it use simple language? Is it accurate? And I think this is a really important one. Does it clearly describe the job being offered? You know, so I learned a while ago from a consultant that we use, don't sugarcoat the bad parts of any job and then hope that you can talk somebody into liking it later. So often as small business owners, we get a good person, we're excited about sitting across the table from us, but there's parts of the job that are necessary that maybe they don't want to do, and we're like, oh, we have this person there, we can massage this later. For instance, perhaps they have a family and they don't want to work on weekends, but the job requires weekends. Perhaps in my case, we had a business where you had to be outside in inclement weather. So, you know, when it was nice out, it was a great job. When it was raining, you still had to be outside. You've got to be clear about those and hire slow and wait for the right person. You have to remember it's expensive to find, train, coach, and keep great people. And we often forget about that. And by squeezing people into roles that they're not good fit for, all we're doing is postponing the need to let somebody go and to start over. And one other thing that we talk about sometimes in our core class is this concept of the ultimate interview. And this works especially well if you're in a service-related business. Always be paying attention to customer service types of people when you're out in the community, when you're at restaurants, golfing, whatever you may be doing, shopping. And I consider those interactions the ultimate interview. And when somebody really pops up on your radar screen about being exceptional and above average, those are a great way to identify people for customer service roles that you may show them your organization to see if they have interest in it. So let's talk a little bit about how people, how we can handle onboarding, training, coaching. You've made a great hire. You've done all that. You know, now what can you do with them? And now I think we really start to get into leadership and what's the difference between managing and leading people. And I think the first thing we need to do, how often do we hire people and expect them to learn through osmosis? I've talked about that earlier. For some reason, we as small business owners don't like to take the time to sit down, to train, to be clear about expectations, and then get angry when we don't understand why people can't see to pick up that piece of paper off the floor or to do it this way when we have not clearly ourselves explained it. Some people love SMART goals, some people don't. There's some discussion around this. But I think it's really important that we're specific, measurable, we're giving people attainable goals, are relevant to their jobs, and they're time-based with some type of follow-up with it too. And the other important part is we have to start thinking about, if we don't learn through osmosis, and if in my opinion, we can't motivate people directly ourselves, that comes from within, I really believe that true leadership is what we need to focus on, and it's best defined as our ability to inspire others to be their best selves. So this, to me, isn't the same as management. And I've got traditional management up here and leadership up here for you, and a little bit of the differences between both of them. Management is that daily function of, for lack of a better way to say it, getting stuff done. There's a whole bunch of ways to do that and to get stuff done. And you might call that a leader in your organization, but I don't think so. People that just get things done aren't necessarily leaders. They may be great managers. Leadership requires us to create a vision, a true vision, repeat it often in good times and bad, hold that flag high for the organization in an effort to inspire others. So I think that's the difference that we need to think about as leaders. And one of the things we should always be thinking about is constant coaching and working to people's strengths. Many of you are familiar with Strength Finders. We actually just did that with our team in here as a exercise, and I think it's really interesting to learn about where people's natural strengths are and try to focus on those and not fix people, but rather to coach them into their areas of strength and to create a culture of ongoing coaching. It benefits for the company and employees around this, or if we have clearer goals, we can create better work-life balance for everybody. And I, again, usually use the term work-life integration because it's very difficult to separate those. We can be more focused if we know what we need to do. Again, we can recognize individual strengths and capabilities, and we can have appreciation for different perspectives, remembering that there's a lot of talk about diversity and the importance of diversity in the workplace and in everything we do. But what I love about diversity is the birthplace of innovation. When you take differences and you bring them together, this is where new ideas come from that we may have never thought of before. So, this may be a bad thing to say, but I think the annual review, quite frankly, is a joke. And the reason I say that is if you have a great team and you're constantly coaching, the annual review should maybe be a 15 to 20 minute process where there's no surprises for anybody. It's a document that's required by HR that we have to do. But if we've been doing coaching consistently throughout the year, the annual review must be done, but it's a pretty easy task to do if people know what's expected of them. You've had discussions throughout. And quite frankly, if you wait to do an annual review and that's all you're doing with your people, how fair is that to your people? How fair is it to just be, upset about performance or expectations and never communicate them? And I know from experience that a lot of us don't do a good job in this area. We can't leave without talking about accountability and critical conversations. And we all need people who give us feedback, but it's not something many of us are really good at or like to do. And it's really doing a disservice to our people if we don't do it. If you don't hold people accountable, we create a culture that negatively impacts our top performers. When top performers look around and say, why am I doing what I do and everybody else is not being held accountable for what they're supposed to do? So in business and life, straight talk matters. So candor is a commodity of uncommon value to our society. And these are just a bunch of quotes for you around candor and critique and communication and being clear with people and what it is and what it isn't, right? So it's got to be sincere, it's got to be real, it's got to be honest, and it's really got to be committed to someone else's success, and it's never brutal when you get right down to it. But a lot of us don't like to do this. So as we kind of come to a close with things, the other thing I think that's really important for you to think about with people is to create a learning culture or a culture of learning where you're sharing stories with each other, learning with each other, doing educational things together, learning as a team. Some of the great companies out there have a culture of learning, like Microsoft. Dell is famous for their culture of learning. It's critically important, and it bonds and brings a team together. And I would say learning is probably one of the most important qualities a leader can have, not only to want to learn yourself, but to help others learn and help others be educated in what they do. If you, the other thing, that I love to think about learning is we need to value learning. We need to encourage it. Again, we need to make it part of our culture. Talked about coaching. Coaching is part of learning, and we can be coached ourselves too, of course. Other parts of learning are setting up meeting rhythms that include education components around that. I talked about telling stories, perhaps reading or a book together, perhaps paying for learning, some type of reward if people want to learn and do some under things and understand some new things. And in my opinion, depending on what type of roles you have, many small businesses do not have a lot of upward mobility. So one of the things I like to really focus on is understand where your people want to go. What are their life goals? What do they want to do? And encourage them to share them with you and help them get there. When you help them get to where they go, understanding they're not going to stay with you forever, you will keep them longer. I can guarantee you keep them longer when you're focused on helping them to get to their own personal goals. And some organizations we do consulting with that have some lower paying jobs, we've actually moved those organizations to say, how can we keep people instead of 12 months, how can we keep them 24 months? And some of these organizations are creating this learning culture where they're actually bringing employees to a new level of understanding that is giving them the skills to get their next job. So they're helping them with resume development. They're helping them with skills like perhaps learning skills, computer skills, Excel skills, people skills, different skills that they may need in their next career, and not trying to hold them with them forever, but really helping them get to the next level. And one other thing is a lot of us, I think, are in small business are disenfranchised with conferences. They're expensive. We often feel we don't get a lot out of them. And I've taken a new attitude on conferences, and that is, if you're there for 1 day or 2 days, we often can get one thing, 1 or 2 things that are incredibly valuable, and it's just being patient and looking for the 1 or 2 things instead of trying to get every event that we go to, every talk that we go to, expecting to learn something that's just going to change our world. Focus on the one thing instead of on everything, and I think you'll look a little different at conferences. And they're important that you attend industry conferences today in this world of rapid change, because that's where you're going to see what the latest information in your industry is. So in the end, this is really all about each of you. You control this outcome, and it stops with us, the leaders. And Lee Iacocca famously said, in the end, all business operations can be reduced to 3 words: people, product, and profits. And unless you've got a good team, you can't do much with the other 2. And I'm now ready to argue that all business operations can be reduced to 1 word: people. In today's environment, a lot of the other things you can get quite easily, but if you do not have a great team, you're never going to be successful, or you're going to be mildly successful versus wildly successful. So building a great team is really up to you. And whatever happens, from a leadership standpoint, it's really, really important that you think about building this great team, and that it's your responsibility as a leader to help build the team that you want to move your business forward. So again, don't forget to share stories with each other and to learn. Share. We do a lot of sharing in the core program, and I think lessons from the trenches are the best way for people to learn from each other. I've got some resources for you, which I will leave you with here. These are great resources to kind of follow up on a little bit of what we talked about. And I want to leave you with this thought. Let me just close. We're at our half hour coming up right now by saying, to remind you, managing is not leading. Leading is creating that vision we talked about, creating opportunity for others, and building a team, not doing it all yourself. And many small business owners, we get stuck trying to do it all ourselves. But I think that, back to Simon Sinek for a minute, I think he says it best when he says, there are leaders and those that lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. We follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those that start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them, or find others that inspire them. So thank you for being with us. If you need anything or any have any questions or follow-up, my email address is right there, or you can always call the center. But hopefully this was helpful for you to get thinking about people and how important they are to your team. So go out, be a great leader, have a great snowy day if you're in Buffalo, and we will see you at our next webinar. Thanks for joining us.